Hi, it's Jonathan Kent Smith, J. K. Smith, 1, 2, 3, 4, popping P since 1961.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the NatiCast, all things Cincinnati. And now to your hosts, Tim Barker, Rex Stull, and Ron Thomas.
Well, today's episode is really special on so many different levels. We have the man, the myth, the legend here with us today, Mr. J.K. Smith. And in this episode, you know, we kind of all talked about it, that Cincinnati has a deep history in the birth of professional sports in the U.S., specifically with the Reds as the first professional baseball team. And it also has like an oversized role in the early days of broadcasting, specifically WLW in radio and then on TV. And our guest today has been a participant and witness to some amazing, incredible times in both the long history of the Reds and WLW. And we are extremely excited and pleased to have the one, the only Mr. J.K. Smith join us here at NatiCast.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Rex.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We're thrilled to have you here. I didn't know that you were here at the birth of the Reds, though. That was new information to me. So this is going to be...
We'll get to that. We're going to get to that. But you're originally born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
A little bit of Marietta, Ohio mixed in there in the middle, but yes, Pittsburgh mostly.
Okay.
And at my Point Park College, where I went for the first 2 years of my collegiate career, we would also intern at WQED in Pittsburgh, which was the original, according to them, educational television station. And it just so happens that when I was there, they decided to start up a new program called Josie Carey's Neighborhood. Josie Carey was a lady who would stand in front of a puppet show and talk to the puppets and teach kids how to do
So this
things.
was like public television? It was their public television
It was
station?
QED, Channel 13, Pittsburgh, and I think they claimed that they were before WCET in Cincinnati.
Oh, wow.
Maybe by a month.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
well, we would work there on doing cue cards. And
Was it based
floor
in at the
stuff.
university
it
that
was,
you
it
were
was
at?
based in an old church
Okay.
near the university.
Well, because WGUC, right, at one point in time was literally
a
at...
Quonset hut.
Yeah.
I worked there.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I also got fired from GUC for pronouncing Shostakovich. That was my first and last weekend on WGUC.
I was nervous right there.
I was like, we're not sure where we're going with
You
this.
said we could say anything we want on here. Regardless, at QED in Pittsburgh, they were starting up this Josie Carey's Neighborhood, and there was a puppeteer back running the little puppets and stuff behind the scenes, and his name was Fred Rogers. And there he was, meek, mild, shy. He would say hello to you in the hall, but that was about it. And after coming to Cincinnati, we looked at TV one day, and there was Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, in front of the camera. And none of us could believe that he would actually come out of his shell and be on camera.
So he was originally just the puppeteer?
Just a puppeteer, that's it.
I had no idea. I did not know that.
Luckily, we were in on the ground floor of that. It was really neat to see him come out and do what he did for the 40 years he was on television.
Yeah, he was an amazing guy.
Absolutely. I love that movie about him.
Yeah,
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Tom Hanks.
It's tremendous.
That was fantastic.
So when I got to Cincinnati,
And so was it the academia or the school that brought you, as opposed to staying where you were?
what brought me it was a 2-year school in Pittsburgh, and UC must have been hurting because they accepted all my credits from that school and applied them, and I was a junior when I got
So,
here.
but back then, how did you even find out? I mean, how did you know that the University of Cincinnati had a broadcasting department?
One of our professors at Point Park College was a good friend of a guy named Dick Helder. They were both in Indiana University, I think, together. And Dick Helder was at that time running the radio and TV department at UC.
Wow.
So the professor calls up the guy in Cincinnati. The guy in Cincinnati says, "Sure, come on down," And
Wow.
boom, my life changed right there,
Just as a side note, Matthew, who's our erstwhile producer here,
CCM guy,
he went in electronic media, which is now what was broadcasting. So he graduated from the same program you did.
Yeah, I knew that, and it's a great place to be from, isn't it, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely.
Full circle.
So anyway, I'm leading up to this little story here.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
get out of the way real quick. all of us were entry-level people at WCET Cincinnati while we were going to school. And in the 1960s, many of us radio and TV students at UC worked part-time in various technical jobs at WCET. And those were the early days of high-maintenance television with the tubes and the springs and the wires and stuff. And the massive tubes at the Channel 48 transmitter, where we were working, would often overheat, and the whole place would just cease to broadcast.
You just shut down, go off the
Right,
air.
you're off
Wow.
the air, yeah. And I was in the studio one afternoon in the control room when we lost the signal again. Immediately, the newly hired rookie hyperactive program director stormed into the control room, and he's screaming at us, "Doesn't anyone have the presence of mind to make an announcement that we're off the air?" And one old veteran engineer, curmudgeon kind of a guy, said, "Sure, buddy, just as soon as you cool down, we'll turn the station back on."
That's awesome.
And then where does the well, a little backstory just for those listening, because I've known you, I mean, my goodness, 53 of my 56 years?
No,
I mean,
no.
all 56?
No, my wife was pregnant with my son, Sean, and you, Nikki, was pregnant with you.
Right. So,
When we knew each other.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So,
So
okay.
prenatal.
Prenatal.
Yeah.
Jeez, that just took it even further.
Absolutely. I used to put a speaker up against Nikki.
Oh, this is going to explain a lot.
Yeah. And try to pronounce Shostakovich.
So, but given that, and then with Rex sitting to my left and his father, talk us through when you and Dave Stahl Sr., where does that connection come into play in this story?
Eventually, after the CET internship, a lot of us would get little jobs at the various TV stations in town, cue cards and running the floor and putting the chairs away after the productions. And the first thing that I ever did at Channel 5, WLWT, and Channel 5 hired me, I guess it was probably 6 months after I got here, was to be at the floor director, cue cards and stuff,
Yeah.
on a program called Mr. Hop. Now, Mr. Hop was a large, probably intimidating bunny, but was supposed to be for a kid show, and it was. It was a kid show. And finally, after he took the rabbit costume off, I met Dave Stahl face to face in the first place.
That would have
Wow.
been Dave Manning, probably.
Oh,
under
right.
The helmet.
I'm sorry,
Dave Manning.
Manning.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. What was his TV name, right? He went by.
It was his air name, Manning.
I was just
Yes.
he went by Dave Manning on TV.
And then he was also a staff announcer at WLW Radio and TV.
Yeah.
And actually, he's one of our professors at the UC Radio and TV school, too. He would come up and teach announcing 101, but he never taught me Shostakovich.
Matthew, we got to work Shostakovich into as a sponsor.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of commercial breaks, we're going to take a quick break and get a word from our sponsor.
The NatiCast would like to take this opportunity to tell you about Red Oak Animal Rescue. It is a local nonprofit animal sanctuary right here in the Cincinnati area. If you're looking for a good way to give back to your community and see some cute animals on your feed all at the same time, please head over to Red Oak Animal Rescue on Instagram or Facebook, or check them out at their website, redoakanimalrescue.com. The best way to support Red Oak Animal Rescue is to check out the Patreon page and sign up for a monthly subscription, or click the link to check out some of their adorable merch. Once again, the NatiCast is very happy to support Red Oak Animal Rescue, and with that, back to the show.
And we're back. JK, I want to pick up on what we were talking about with what I consider Guinness Book of World Records territory of these Reds games. Seriously, because this is what fascinates me about you and sports and the city of Cincinnati. Because I believe, and I'm going to do some due diligence on my part, but I believe you have borne witness to more Reds games than anyone else. If you had to guesstimate, how many games would you say?
Man,
If
I'm
you-
going to have
would
to
you
get
even-
my calculator out.
Yeah.
Let's say
I mean, just do the math from
60 games a year for the past 50 years. What's that come out to?
3,000.
wow.
Okay.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's
Yeah.
it. I can't do it anymore. I quit.
So you probably started working then down at Crosley, right?
1965.
Wow.
Yeah. That's when it was. I can tell you, it was a super hot day. I never met the Pittsburgh broadcasters at all. It was up in ratty little booth that they had for the visiting team's
Right.
announcers, and my job was to cue them in and out of the commercial breaks and give them the cards to do promotions and stuff.
Right.
And the guy's name was Bob Prince. He was a long time broadcaster, and I suppose it was about 100 degrees up there.
Wow.
And I turned maybe the third inning over, and I see that he has his shirt off. He's on radio, doesn't matter to me, you know. About the sixth inning, I look over, and he's got his pants off. And I can't tell you that he went au naturel all the way. All I can tell you is it was a hell of a way to be introduced to the broadcasting industry. And I'm thinking, is this a way it is everywhere?
Right.
You know? And I admired him for just being comfortable.
He was like,
Sure.
"Hey, whatever, I'm on radio, man. That's why I got."
Right. But he's another guy that was rude and crude whenever the microphone got turned off.
I mean, I think that was the way, wasn't it? I mean,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the culture of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So was Wade Hoyt the Reds
He was
announcer at the time?
He was. But I never actually worked with him like I worked with these other guys. They seemed to always put me with the visiting team for
You
some
were.
strange reason.
That's how you
They
start out the
always
visiting
stuck
back
me
then,
with
right?
the-
Yeah, it's-
always stuck me with the naked guys for some reason.
Even if you weren't behind the camera, I mean, you had to have borne witness, even in the Crosley days. I mean, you attended these games. I mean, you were present for these games.
Correct. Just to have been there the night that the helicopter came in the middle of the 1970 season.
Yeah.
And picked up the home plate from Crosley Field, and then transported it over to Riverfront Stadium for the next day's game when it opened.
Oh my God, I just got chills. I didn't know. I didn't realize that.
And that was that announcement that you sent me, which I think maybe came from you,
yes,
that
yes.
opened a memorial we did for my dad. It was
Yeah.
him doing the opening announcement and throwing it to Pee Wee Reese, I think it was.
Out on
Yeah.
the field.
The programs normally scheduled at this time will not be seen in order that we may bring you the following Reds baseball game.
It was him doing the opening announcement, and he always used to tell me, until that clip came up, he always used to say, you know, because he really wasn't a baseball fan either, but he got to do a lot of it, right? I mean, he got
Oh,
to see
yeah.
it. He was around a lot of it.
Anything was live television.
There he was.
Cincinnati Reds baseball tonight from Cincinnati's Riverfront Stadium. The game between the Cincinnati Reds and the Atlanta Braves. And now from Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati, here's Ed Kennedy and Pee Wee Reese.
You know, whenever we'd go down there, he'd say, you know, I was here for I did announcing on the opening day here at Riverfront Stadium, and he'd tell that story where the helicopter picked up the home plate and took it over and
Yep.
dropped it at Riverfront.
The operation that it took to do a color television broadcast with 3 gigantic cameras back in those days, take all day to set the cameras up and put the audio booth in and get the thing properly lit. And they were at least 400 pounds each, these TV cameras.
Wow.
The cable that it took to run from the remote broadcast truck down over the side on Findlay Street, up the wall of Crosley Field, and then over to the 3 different camera positions was called TV-81. It was at least 1.5 inches in diameter.
Wow.
There were 81 separate wires bound up inside this coaxial cable, and 25 feet of that stuff weighed 200 pounds.
Oh my
And then
goodness.
they hook them together.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, by the time those guys got the stuff installed and prepared to do a nighttime broadcast game,
Right, because under the lights, right?
been
there.
working
Right.
at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the game starts at 7, and oh man, it was just unbelievable to watch them not only install the equipment but have the energy to continue to do
Yeah.
a broadcast and then tear it all out at the end of the night.
So, how many games a year would they broadcast?
They
on
would
TV?
do probably 10.
Okay,
to
so I mean,
start
they
with.
literally put it in and took it out. They didn't do like a 3-game series and then take it out, or
And the reason they had to install it and take it out the same day is because they would load it up in that old pie wagon broadcast truck, drive the broadcast truck back over to the 9th and Elm Street television studios of WLW, take it upstairs, put the cameras together in the studio, and do the Ruth Lyons television show.
it was the same
Nice.
cameras.
Wow. Every time they did that, they had to go and take the old stuff out and put the new stuff in.
Wow.
So
And-
you were there for all that. So
Yeah,
how
was
did
it
they-
Bob
I would watch them work that.
right,
I was not actually able to handle the cameras back then. Thank
Yeah.
God.
right.
And was Bob Braun
He
there
was
at the time? or he-
second banana to Ruth Lyons.
Okay.
He didn't have his own show yet.
Okay.
Right.
A show which I was privileged to direct for several years, by the way.
Oh wow!
Bob
I
Braun?
did not
Yep.
know that.
I did
Yep.
not know that.
Yep. The Bob
You
Braun
know, it's
show.
it's interesting because Matthew was when he was at UC, he did his internship at Channel 12, and Rob was still there. So Rob
Oh,
Braun was still the anchor. It
sure.
was just kind of at the end of Rob's tenure up there, so he got to, we kind of walked him through the whole kind of history of the.
Well, I remember when Rob Braun would walk in with his dad in the prop room. He was about 10 years old, probably. And he was always kind of shy and withheld and everything. And the other kid that came in with his father was Nick Clooney's son, George.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was about 8.
Right.
Yeah.
I have to say, the most unusual looking child I've ever seen. How could this duckling
Yeah.
become the most handsome man
Right.
in the world, man?
It worked out for him,
It
didn't
sure
it?
did, man.
paid
Just
off.
like Mr. Rogers just surprised the heck out of me. You know?
Yeah.
It's amazing,
You never
isn't it?
know.
Well, and the Clooney family was. I mean, I tried to explain once to them about. Because Rosemary Clooney was a
Huge.
superstar.
Goddess, she was
Huge.
Right, I mean, of
good
the
as it
day,
gets.
yeah.
As
Where
good as
it
it
wasn't
gets.
just she was just immensely
Tremendous.
popular.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So that whole family was just, just I don't know, just kind of an amazing group of people.
Legendary.
Yeah.
When was Pete's rookie year?
72.
No.
63, I think.
63.
Oh, 63, yeah.
So
Yeah,
he was young when you first went down there.
Yeah.
To Crosley, right? I mean, he
I
was
saw
just,
his rookie year. I did.
Did you? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Did you ever go down for spring training and do anything down
Believe
there?
it or
with-
not, one year they took our whole television crew down there. It was back in the 70s.
Wow.
And there was no remote units in Florida at all. So they had to drive that truck down there, set it all up. Wow. I think we did 3 games over a long weekend, maybe.
Right.
Okay.
And flew us back home again, you know.
Wow.
Wow.
Drove the truck back up to Cincinnati.
I have fond memories of that truck being down there at Riverfront. When there'd be something going on down there, and we'd be hanging out.
I wouldn't call my memories fond. That thing was a pain in the butt, man.
I know. Well, we were kids. You know what I mean?
Keep it
you're,
running,
You're
though.
in the basement of the,
Sure,
the
I
stadium we
understand.
love, and you're getting to hang out by the visiting players' entrance. And
Absolutely.
Having Steve
I'm glad you
Garvey
remember that.
come
Yeah.
out and give us a chicken scratch autograph.
And say please.
Yes.
Please, yes, exactly. Well, we were talking earlier. I
Yeah.
mean, this whole podcast came up. I don't know if it was my birthday. I don't remember what day we went down there, but maybe it was after that. But
Yeah.
Tim and Ron and I were
Yeah.
coming down to the Reds game. We were sitting out in the bleachers. We were
Yep.
sitting out there, and on my way down, I just kind of said, "That'd be really cool to just do a Cincinnati podcast." And we went in, saw you. You were in there
Yeah.
running the camera, and we hung out with you in the batter's eye. And
Yeah.
and so really, this is all.
It's always fun to host you guys there.
Yeah, no,
It
it's
really
so
is.
it's
Even though I
perfect.
missed,
Yeah, it's fitting
I
that
missed
you're the first
14
guest.
shots as I was speaking.
I
But
knew
I'm
that was
old and they
coming.
forgive me. You know?
Right.
Just lock it down, JK, and you'll be all right.
So, one of the questions that rattled around in my head: were you a baseball fan growing up?
Still not one.
Still not.
Really?
Wow.
Really?
I love football, but baseball, I just as soon leave it alone, you know.
I'm glad you unpacked that because so if you are born and raised Pittsburgh, where does your football
Have you been,
did the Steelers pull anything on you or
No,
that's
no,
okay?
No. I never really got interested in football till I telecast it.
Okay.
And the Bengals used to be pretty good.
Right.
And it was fun to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
When the
were you a
Bengals were
nipper? Like Bengals at Nipper
I
time?
can't remember doing anything at Nipper.
Okay.
But I can remember in the
Because it was only
very
like 1 or
early
2
days.
seasons up there.
Right.
Two, I
It was
think,
2
uh-huh.
seasons, yeah.
68.
It's exactly because
69.
70 was Riverfront opened, right?
That's
And
when
then
I probably
70.
started
yeah.
doing it then.
Yeah.
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 And didn't Sean run cable for you on some
I'm
of those
sure he
Bengals
did.
games?
Yeah. He got on the sideline.
Yeah.
Sean is my son and Tim's contemporary. And
Yeah.
It's it was fun to be able to get him on the sideline and see the game up close and personal.
Right?
You know?
That's awesome.
He got a whole new appreciation for how fast and hard and big those guys are too. You know?
Sure.
So you did all of the Bengals home games as well?
Pretty much.
Wow.
Pretty much.
For how long was that?
Well, we would do the network games for NBC, CBS, and
Oh, for-
before
for
Fox
any-
ever existed. Yeah.
You mean you'd send the feed out to whoever
They
was
would
during the
use
game?
our crew to man their cameras and slow motion machines and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a great way to learn. But you have to remember that I predate videotape. You know, it was everything. I do. It was. I remember when the first big 2-inch wide videotape machine was hoisted up the front steps of Crosley Square and came in and they turned it on. And there it was.
You know, it's interesting. I remember vividly my dad, who left broadcasting and then became a teacher, right? Taught Tim in high school.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He said it was the videotape machine that caused that for him because he loved live television.
Oh,
He
no
came
question.
out of It came out of live theater, right? You talked about
Yeah.
the Mr. Hop show, which was taped, but I mean, it was for him, you know, doing the live voiceover, the live announcements, the new, you know, all of
Yeah.
that stuff. And he just said once it started to go to videotape and, you know, you guys were doing, you mentioned Ruth Lyons,
Right.
right? Midwestern,
Live.
Midwestern
Right.
Hayride was in there. He
Right.
said they had orchestras in there.
Absolutely. What a great time to have lived through. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And he's right. The immediacy of live television evaporated something in the soul of television. I don't know.
Well, it's the same as live theater.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
us as a group came
Yeah, yeah.
out of live theater, and you know, I mean, you can see film and television or whatever, but you know, there is nothing
No.
like
Nope.
a live audience. I mean, there's
Nope.
just nothing
100%.
like it.
If it wasn't for the Playhouse and the park in this town, I don't know what we'd do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I mean, it's a great energy jolt, and that, like I said, back then when TV was live, it was live, and that's the other thing too. It's not just the audience part; it's the thrill of live,
Yeah.
right? And everything that goes
You
with
don't
it.
get a second chance.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. You're up. You're up.
And within the industry, so is that, you know, as we're even evolving with technology and how quick the advancements that are being made, like when you saw that, were you excited by it?
Sure.
Were you? Yeah.
I mean, basically, I'm more of a techie than a production guy.
Right.
Although I enjoy both of them, you know.
Sure.
And luckily, I was able to direct many things besides the Braun Show.
Did you ever do an Uncle Al show?
I actually worked for 2 years at Channel 9 in between directing and coming back as an engineer technician at Channel 5. And I think Bob Jameson was the director, and when he would go on vacation, I
Fill in, slot in.
I drew the short straw, yeah.
All right.
And I did do Uncle Al, come to think
Well,
of it.
because we now have established that you have a long resume in children's television, starting
Clearly.
with.
I guess I do.
I mean,
yeah.
let's think about this. You dealt with the very beginnings,
Right.
right, of Mr. Rogers as a puppeteer only.
Right?
That's right.
Came to Cincinnati,
That's
Mr.
right.
Hop,
I never
Yeah.
thought about that.
and then
Seriously.
Uncle Al, right? I mean, this is
No.
all live children's
It's all
television.
coming back to me now.
So in
I'm
addition to
reliving my childhood, too.
and in addition to not really being a Reds fan, he really doesn't like baseball fan. He's not a big
Yeah.
he's not a big children's programming
So you
fan.
would,
either.
well, if you had to wear a jersey of a Cincinnati Red, what name would be on the back? If you had to, if you were forced to make that decision.
Sparky Anderson.
Okay.
Great.
Oh,
That is
Nice.
great.
I
And so
like
did
it.
you get to interact with Sparky?
yeah. We would always do interviews and
Yeah,
stuff. And
yeah.
I mean, we're not buddies, but
Yeah, yeah.
I recognize his face, and he maybe recognized mine. I don't know.
It was supposed to be a real character.
He is.
Yeah.
And he's always got 1,000 good stories. Too.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll say one thing that everybody knows who Bob Euchre is, right?
Of
The
course.
funniest
Absolutely.
guy.
Still with us.
unbelievable.
He's like in
yeah, he
his,
still
like,
does radio.
mid-90s. Yeah.
He does the radio for a minute.
I have
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah, you
Milwaukee.
were
Because
telling me
I
you got
have
one of
the
the feeds.
I listen to the
Yeah.
games on the MLB app, especially when I'm traveling, and you can pick up any of the feeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will intentionally tune in to listen to Milwaukee games to listen to Euchre.
Absolutely. So one time,
and his partners cue him up too to just get him
of
rolling.
course
Oh,
they
yeah.
do. It doesn't take much to get his spring on
Right,
there.
rolling. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
So he's up in the press box where many things happen that you can't talk about. But in this case, I got my buddy to take my camera, and I went over to Euchre, who was sitting there eating his spaghetti or something. And I said, Bob, I mean, we worked in the same booth together many years, but I said, Bob, can I get a picture with you? He says, not if you're going to be in it.
I thought he was going to say, please.
I should have said that.
That's
So
awesome.
he's just as funny off the air as he is on.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you did Hoyt, and then Al Michaels, right,
Yeah,
took over, right?
couple
So
years
Al
he was
Michaels
there.
was there a few years.
Not very many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two or three, I
Then he
think.
made the jump to the big leagues.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell he had it. You know,
Right.
he was
Oh, yeah.
super prepared and could just describe things in a way that I've never heard anybody else do things, you know?
And you were witness to think about it, the Big Red Machine,
Yeah.
possibly the best baseball team ever.
I wish I
Yeah.
had appreciated it more while I was there. Now, of course, looking back, I can really relive it and think about how cool it was to be down in the low third dugout when Pete got 41-92.
Oh, wow.
The world just stopped down,
Yeah.
you know?
So
Just stopped.
I have a story for that. It was September 11th, 1985. That was the date that Pete got that hit.
Was it?
So you remember, I remember it was September 11th now because it was September 11th.
Tied together,
And it was
yeah.
1985 because I was at a Sting concert at River Bend.
Okay.
And so Sting, you know,
The
whatever
Police
song.
or Sting?
No,
I
Sting.
mean-
On this was his first kind of solo tour.
Oh, okay.
And Sting comes out on the stage, opens up a piece of paper, and they said, they just told me backstage to read 4,192.
Does that mean anything to you guys?
The crowd went ballistic. That's how he said it. They just told me backstage
Yeah,
to
that's funny.
read 4,192, and you know what it means. And the crowd went crazy. So that's
Wow.
where I was at. I was at River Bend on
Wow.
4192
funny
because
how-
we'd gone a couple days before. It took him a couple days to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd been at the game a couple days earlier to get
Yeah.
it. So.
Marge was wishing he wouldn't get it when they were on the road.
I
you
know. I
Right.
bet. Did you ever meet her?
Unfortunately. Yes, Marge was, let's say, an interesting woman.
To say the least.
Honey,
Sweetheart.
Marge would be
Mm-hmm.
here's another press box story. Marge had the giant dogs, the St. Bernards.
Shotzi.
Yeah.
Shotzi 1, 2, 9, and 12.
Oh, yeah.
Here comes Marge, and she would come in there occasionally with the dog
Uh-huh.
in the food part of the press box. It was spaghetti night.
Oh, boy.
Marge reached her hand into the pan full of raw spaghetti, cooked spaghetti, took the handful out, threw the spaghetti on the floor, and let Shotzi eat it.
Ay, ay, ay.
I couldn't believe it. Nobody could.
Wow.
Oh,
At least she
man.
didn't throw the meatballs
Well,
down there.
that's-
too.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean-
right?
Do you,
I'm sorry. I'm just picturing.
The image, yeah.
now, did you ever do any of the Monday Night Football?
Yeah. He would come
I
in.
I heard a story about similar to that. Marge Schott and Howard Cosell in the owner's box. Were you there for that, or did you hear?
You'll have to jog my memory. I
Yeah.
may have, but I can't off the top of my head.
Spill it.
remember.
Spill it.
I want to
Ron.
hear
Well,
it, man.
I guess they were all hanging out before the broadcast. Howard Cosell, Marge Schott, and a couple of other people.
Yeah.
And I guess Howard had thrown his blazer, those yellow blazers, put it in one of the chairs, and
ABC.
yeah. And so apparently they didn't notice, and Shotzi climbed into the chair
Oh, boy.
with the blazer, and as they do, they a couple cocktails, and so at the end they have to shush the dog, which I don't know how you shush a dog that big, but
I
the
don't
dog
either.
finally get down, and
Yeah.
so he puts on his blazer. They're ready to go down to the booth to broadcast the game, and he starts kind of sniffing the sleeve of the blazer.
Man, are you kidding me?
And so as the story goes, he kind of turned. Madam, your dog has pissed on my coat.
You can spell Shotzi with an I, maybe.
Oh man! Oh, but yeah,
there were
apparently
stories
the dog
about
peed.
with the dog taking a shit
Oh,
around
yeah.
the
Oh
state.
yeah!
I
So
mean,
the
I
dog
sure.
believed
yeah.
itself anywhere. And
Somebody will
on
pick
the
it up.
field.
Yeah.
right on the field.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And they would have to,
Yeah.
grounds crew would have to come out with a snow shovel and walk around behind the dog, you know.
I was at a wedding with her, and we were at the reception, and the groom was in the Navy. He was a Navy guy. Mm-hmm. And at the reception, they actually put Marge in the back table with all the Navy. These are active duty Navy guys.
Oh, my God.
And Marge shot. And get up to go to the bathroom, and there's Marge back holding court. With that.
Sick, yeah.
Honey.
If anybody could cuss like a sailor,
Oh my
it's Marge
God!
Shot, believe
Well,
me.
but the Navy guys are all blushing back there. I'm not sure what she was telling them.
I
But
can you imagine these guys are probably 19, 20, 21
I'm
years
sure
old.
there
right?
were words that those Navy guys had never heard before.
And images conjured that they wouldn't want to think about. Right?
Yep.
But back to the World Series teams. I mean, that means you were at the World Series games?
Pretty much, yeah. Up until, I'd say, the mid-'90s, and then they started bringing their own network guys
Well,
in.
but the Reds haven't been back there since 1990
yeah,
anyway.
it's been a while since I had to worry about that problem.
We were at the 90 game.
Yep, we
My
were.
dad, J.K., Sean, and myself.
The
Really?
fifth game
Yeah.
of the series, maybe?
No, because they
that
had
was a sweep.
It was a sweep, so
Oh,
it was.
yeah, it was, wasn't it?
It was Sean. It was the second, I think, because Sean and I went, and then there was a big. First of all, we just graduated college, so money's tight, and then we were back and forth about do we invest? We're like, we should just buy tickets for the series because we don't. And I'm like, that's just so much money. No, we can buy them. You can always. So we had them, and we were contemplating
For
selling
all
them
the
for
home
money.
games?
Yeah,
For every single home game? Wow.
Because you'd get refunded
Sure.
if they
If
you
sweep.
didn't, right.
But you're
That's
that
still a
age.
lot.
You're still,
I mean-
you're like, this is hard to wrap around investing in something like that. And the second game we had, we were debating, do we sell these and make a large
Lots of
profit?
money.
But we came to the decision to bring our dads.
Oh,
And
I'll never forget that.
It was the best decision
To
we
sit
could have
in the
ever made.
stands.
Yep.
Yep.
Just sat up there, took it all in.
Probably
MC
the first
Hammer.
time I had sat in the stands to watch a game instead of a viewfinder for, my
yeah.
whole career, maybe,
And that's where so they probably had someone else working it? Is that how you were
Well,
available?
that's
or-
when they started bringing in
Okay.
the other big
Yeah.
New York and L.A. crews.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad they did for that series.
Oh,
Because
me
that was-
too. That's an
that was incredible.
unforgettable night. Absolutely.
That's a great memory.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, that really is
Yes,
a
it was.
great
No,
memory.
yeah, it was.
For one
that was
bright,
special.
shining moment, I was a baseball fan.
I think you were an MC Hammer fan because it was the whole "too legit to quit." We were all getting off. on that.
Parachute pants get
Yeah,
away every
there, yeah,
time, man.
exactly.
Oh, that's
you wore
incredible.
parachute pants.
I got them on right now. Wait a minute. I'm following Bob Prince's example. I took them off a while back.
And then, so then you're a football fan, clearly,
Yeah, yeah.
Bengals fan. Who would be if you could wear one Bengals jersey? Whose name would you?
Booby Clark.
That's excellent, Booby. I love it.
The NatiCast is supported by Mad Cheese. Mad Cheese is a completely plant-based, dairy-free cheese and charcuterie shop located in Madisonville. The owners, Cincinnati natives Heather and Reggie Donaldson, handcraft over 30 different plant-based cheeses and meats in their commercial production kitchen behind the storefront. You're invited to stop in and sample the wide array of products, book a curated tasting, or sign up for the new subscription box program, which will feature an exclusive new cheese every month with recipes and board building tutorials. For more, head to Instagram and Facebook at Mad Cheese Cincy or go to www.madcheese.com. And with that, back to the show.
We were just looking up today about Crosley, just some history of Crosley, and they said from midnight till 6 a.m. they actually broadcast WLW at 500,000 watts.
Not only night. Daytime too.
In daytime too.
Oh yeah.
And they said, but I'm sure it was joking because they definitely could pick it up in Europe. But they used to say, oh, in Australia, you know, when the bounce is right, and you grab a fish, you can hear it through your fillings. That's what the story they used to. But I guess you could hear it all over the place. I used to listen when I lived up in the East Coast on a good night, you know, with a radio, with get a good bounce. You could still pick up WLW. It was a clear channel. So if you got a good bounce on the East Coast, I could get WLW occasionally.
Guess where I heard WLW? Vietnam.
Rebroadcast. Well, like Voice of America or something.
No. Over the air. 12 hours difference in time period.
Just bounced.
And it was like dawn. So it was nighttime most of the places between here and Cincinnati.
So this was when it was 500,000 watts.
No,
Really?
that was back in the 30s.
Right.
I'm not quite that.
You're not quite that old.
This was 50,000 watt clear channel WLW, and a guy in our 8-man tent had gone to the PX in Saigon and bought this big Helicrafters shortwave and standard broadcast radio. Very sensitive, very
Yeah.
good.
Right.
And he was sitting there listening to it, and I said, could you just go to 700
Yeah.
kilocycles and see if it comes in? And,
Boom.
well, not boom, but I would say the third night, maybe the third morning, we tried it.
Wow.
Wow.
Came in for about 15 minutes.
What were you doing over there?
Yeah,
I
we
mean, what was-
skipped
we
over
skipped
that.
over
Like your
Vietnam. I mean,
service,
you went
you know,
to
that's-
2 years of college and then
Yeah.
I
where
got
did Vietnam
drafted.
come in?
Yeah, got drafted.
But you weren't in college.
Well, it's my fault because I dropped back from 12 credit hours to 9 credit hours
And
to
that-
save money, and that, boom, puts you right to the top of the list.
Wow.
I thought I could get away with it for 3 months, and I couldn't.
Now,
so
were you
this
like
was-
a
My
signal
goodness.
battalion or something like that?
Yeah, believe it or not, it was a supply depot in Saigon. So I have no hero stories to tell you. I don't think I got shot at. I don't think anybody dropped a grenade in the gas tank of my Jeep. But
Wow.
I spent my year in Saigon learning to eat French, Asian cuisine, and learning
Wow.
about how other people live and
So it was 1 year that you were there?
you're building. Yeah.
And that was between Point, what was it?
No, that was
Point Park
after,
College.
that was I still had 15 credit hours to go in college
At UC.
at UC.
Oh, they pulled you out when you were at UC.
Oh yeah, but I didn't qualify as a full-time student, so boom, they were building it up out there in 1965, and
Wow.
they didn't get you.
Wow.
Did you try at all to try and get into the radio side or brought in within the military?
Sure, of course I did. When we got to Saigon, I went to AFRTS radio station run by the Army there, and applied for a gig there, And I'll tell you who was the morning man when I was there was Cronauer, Adrian Cronauer.
Oh, my
The real
Yeah.
Good Morning Vietnam
Morning
guy.
Vietnam.
Yes, he was.
Good
And he was
morning,
nothing
Vietnam.
like the Robin Williams portrayal of him, but
So wait, we just stumbled here
Yeah.
on our way out the door.
Right.
That you were
It's another episode.
in Vietnam.
It's another
with
episode.
Adrian Cronauer.
so
Yeah.
they said, sure, we can take you and put you in AFRTS. You have all this experience in college and everything. But of course, we'll want you to re-enlist for another 2 years. I said, bye. I went back to my depot.
I'll go back to
Going out
supply
my
depot.
next 9 months, and I'm gone. But
You're like, maybe if I were up on the front line, I might take you up on that. But back here at
Yeah.
the supply depot,
a
I'll-
sergeant in this supply depot was going through the resumes and stuff, And said, okay, Smith, he says, I see here you got some radio and television stuff there. And I said, yeah. He says, okay, take these telephone wires and put them up in that rubber tree over there. And that's the extent of my broadcast career in Vietnam.
it's funny when we were going to do this because you had done the thing for my dad's memorial.
Yeah.
And I remember when Matthew was putting it together, he goes, "How was he not an announcer? I
Well,
don't understand
yeah.
it." Right? He was listening
it's a
to
piece of the career you don't know about, too. I was the youngest disc jockey in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
See, come on, man. This is another episode, man.
What are we?
Seriously, this is a two-parter.
That is.
Yeah.
We're going to bring you back. You're
Yeah.
going to come back
JK
for
the
another.
Yeah.
DJ. That was my air name.
Oh, I love it.
Better.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, It's funny because I wish we'd have caught some of the stuff on the way out the door.
Totally, but that's a second episode. We have to have him back for another episode.
I agree, 100%. I think, we just barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing with these kind of people because, they're whatever. It's been his life and these stories, and I think a lot of times they just think people aren't even interested, and they just don't realize.
Oh.
I mean, let's just think about the fact that we just stumbled on Vietnam and Adrian Cronauer.
Right?
I mean,
he just tosses that out there.
I mean,
I caught the big one over in Vietnam for about 15 minutes.
It's like,
What?
Wait a minute. We went from the 2-year college to the University of Cincinnati to working.
Yeah,
When did you
WLW.
go to Vietnam for a year?
Right.
Amazing to me. The layers is just amazing.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to find people with layers that equal the number that he has. I mean, that's just the depth and the breadth.
Oh yeah.
The talent side and the technology side. And,
Right.
And we forget.
Yeah.
We're sitting here. We can broadcast around the world with a hair of a cable, with a piece of glass.
Yeah, and that's what he was talking about. These cameras. I mean, look at that. There's a camera sitting out there. And he was talking about a camera that weighed 400 pounds. When they were first doing cross field
with
games.
that 81 pin multi-core
multi-core.
cable, stuff like that. That's
Yeah.
wow. But definitely a good guest, and once again, I mean, it's perfectly fitting that he was our first guest since
I think so too.
Yeah.
we saw him, the day you thought about
and
this.
it ropes
the day you thought
together
this
what
up.
we're trying to do here,
Yeah.
right? This is a show about people who either ended up in this town, or were born here, but all of the connections that they have, and all of the just the fields of interest just from that. Right?
Totally.
I mean, I think it just proves it's the case that proves the point, right? I mean, it really does.
110%.
And there's just so many more out there, and I can't wait to tell them. I really
Likewise.
can't. I can't. So
What time is it?
anyway,
I'm getting good and
Time to
hungry.
eat.
The NatiCast is proudly brought to you by Paco Lago Productions. This show is hosted by Tim Barker, Rex Stull, and Ron Thomas, produced and edited by Matthew Lake, associate produced by Ethan Spanja. Special thanks to TCP Studios for the recording studio, to Sadie Kern at Popgun Flow for the graphics, and to Brando Triantafilou for the theme song. Thanks so much for joining us for our first full episode of the NatiCast. With any feedback or questions, please follow us and send us a DM at _NatiCast on Instagram, or head to our website, thenaticast.com. This show brought to you wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time.